Welcome back to the Stupid Fans Club. I am the host, Shaan Donn, and welcome to the club. I am back this week. I was out sick last week and couldn't go over any of the games, but I am fully recovered and ready to talk a lot of college football here. Listen, if you're not subscribed, please make sure you subscribe to the channel. We would greatly appreciate it. And make sure you follow us on TikTok. Make sure you follow us on the TikTok page at Stupid Fans Club. Let's jump right into it. We had some big college football games this weekend, starting with the Ole Miss Georgia game. Georgia went down to Ole Miss to play the Rebels, and they got obliterated 28-10. Yes, Georgia lost to someone other than Alabama. I felt like this was inevitable for Georgia. When I announced last week that, or I guess the week before last now, I said it was after the Texas game, and I said Georgia is a team that could go beat the number one team in the country and then go lose to Florida. So many people were like, this is blasphemous. What are you talking about? There's no way Georgia loses to Florida. Georgia didn't lose to Florida, but everybody saw that game. I felt like that was the first game where people finally, I've been screaming it all season, but it's the game where people finally on the national stage were like, what's going on down here? Carson Beck was playing terrible. He threw 3 interceptions in the Texas game. He threw 3 interceptions in the Florida game. He's just throwing interception after interception. He throws an interception every single game. And I felt like the writing was on the wall. I felt like this was inevitable. Georgia wasn't going to continue to play that bad on offense, especially against a team like Ole Miss, who they have like they're not going to play with you. Georgia kind of got lucky in the Florida game when DJ Lagway went out with the injury. Like, who says Georgia doesn't lose that game if he's able to stay in? But Ole Miss is certainly a team that, you can't play around with them. They have 2 losses, but I felt like Ole Miss was an underranked team. I felt like they were better. They lost a tough game to Kentucky the week after Kentucky, or 2 weeks after Kentucky gave Georgia all they could handle. And Georgia was the number 1 team in the country at the time. And then they lost to LSU at LSU in a night game when LSU was still playing hot. I mean, they were always a competitive team, and I know they've lost some big players there, but I knew this was going to be a game where if Georgia didn't show up, they were going to get embarrassed, and that's exactly what happened. And this time, it really wasn't on Carson Beck. He did throw an interception, but I believe it was a deflected ball that popped in the air. Like it wasn't on Carson Beck this time. It was never really competitive from start to finish. After that first drive where Jackson Dart threw that interception and Georgia got that short field and punched it in for a touchdown, Georgia did absolutely nothing. And then when you look at the defensive side of the ball, they have clear problems, which I've been saying and screaming for weeks and weeks. Georgia has problems in the secondary. Mississippi State lit them up in the second half. It was, nobody wanted to pay attention, though. It was just big bad Georgia. They weren't being punished in the rankings. They were still like, oh, Georgia's going to figure it out. No, this is a real problem. It was a few weeks into the season where I realized, oh, this isn't Georgia just getting off the slow starts and they're going to figure it out. They have this is the team that we are this year. And again, it just was put on full display against Ole Miss. No offensive production and just too many big chunk plays given up by that secondary. It felt like every play Ole Miss was getting was for 30 yards. I mean, just huge chunk plays every single play. And what was so crazy was for a while they were holding them to field goals. It was just like Georgia was hanging in there because the defense kept somehow stopping them in that red zone. But Georgia couldn't do anything on offense. They couldn't put together a full drive. It was a point in the game where I was like, it felt like helpless. Like if Georgia couldn't get a big play to go and put themselves right at the one or just get in the end zone off of a big play, you just almost knew that the offensive line wasn't going to hold up for a full 75-yard drive, or Carson Beck wasn't going to not throw a pick for whatever it was. You just felt it. And then, when we weren't moving the ball, then it was turnovers. It was just it was one of the worst games I've seen them play in a very long time. And Georgia barely loses games, but they play poorly. But this one was just, pretty much from start to finish, poor. And even when Jackson Dart got hurt and their backup came in, he was lighting Georgia up. So, again, this is not a Georgia just needs to turn it on. They need to focus. No, this is the talent level. This is Georgia this year. This is not the Georgia's behind me. That is not this team. And we'll get to the rankings, and there's a lot of outrage about where Georgia is ranked, but I'm kind of looking like I don't see it. I'm a huge Georgia fan here, but I don't see it this year. I've watched every single game, and I just don't know that they are a national championship contender this year. I just don't see it. And the question is, how did we get here? Who thought with Georgia being the number one ranked team in the country coming into the season, how did we get to them now being out of the top 5 and the top 10 and not in the college football playoff at this point in the season? The question is, it starts with the offense. If you watched any Georgia game this year, you've probably heard them reference Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey. They say it every single game. When you look at this offense, there's no Ladd McConkey. There's no Brock Bowers. So who do you go to on the off? They say it every single game. I'm so tired of hearing it. But it is true. Those were two dominant players for us in the receiving core, and they are having great success in the NFL. They are no longer here, which means everyone was expecting Carson Beck to take that leap. Now everyone is questioning, did you just have superstars around you last year that made you look better than what you actually are? Because this year you don't have those same weapons and you look terrible. You have, they said Carson Beck's reasons for coming back this year was I think it was 3 top reasons. It was to win a national championship, to win a Heisman, and to get drafted in the first round. He has played himself probably out of all 3. Maybe still a first round quarterback, but definitely coming into the season, he was the top guy. They had the Giants taking him or something. Like, he was the top guy, and he's completely played himself out of that. I don't think Georgia is a national championship contender this year. Played himself out of that. And do we even need to discuss the Heisman? No. So, how did we get to this point? It starts with the receiving core. Again, we brought up Brock Bowers, Ladd McConkey, no longer there. So we needed Carson Beck to step up, and we needed new go-to receivers. Our number one receiver didn't even make it to the start of the season because of off-the-field issues. If you follow Georgia at all, you know that is it seems to be our kryptonite. Everybody just gets arrested in the offseason. I don't know what happens. So Ra Thomas, he was going to be our number one receiver, and he gets dismissed from the team for off-the-field issues, and this was a history with him with the other teams apparently that he was on, and so I guess he had a short leash. I think I don't recall what exactly it was. Maybe but I don't even want to speculate, but something very serious, and he had to be dismissed from the team. I remember scratching my head about that one because I was like, man, this is before the season now. I was like, I am curious. I was concerned, or not even concerned at that point, but very curious of who our offensive weapons were going to be, because again, there's no our top two are gone now. So I'm like, oh, I'm sure we're going to have somebody, but who is it going to be? So again, Ra Thomas was supposed to be that guy. We don't have him. Number 2, Colby Young. After the Alabama game, he gets dismissed from the team. And I don't know that he is kicked off the team. I don't think he's off the team. He has to be away from the team, though, while he sorts out his legal issues. He was our big, tall target for Carson Beck, supposed to be, the red zone threat. And, after, we're only 4 weeks in to the season, and he's no longer with the team. So we now have guys who are supposed to be 3rd and 4th and 5th and 6th options now having to step up and be those main go-to targets. Arian Smith is a deep threat. He's now, and I've actually tipped my cap to him because I felt like he stepped up and done as much as he can. Dominic Lovett as well. I think these guys are doing as much as they can, but to just all of a sudden be thrown into, we need you to be the number 1 now. Dylan Bell, number 1. Dominic Lovett, number 1. Like, I need you guys to be our main go-to targets. That is just a completely different role and different expectation. And I think that is, it's clear to show on the field. Like, that is just not, this is not the team that we thought we would have. These are not the targets in the system we thought we would have. And I think that's the biggest part of the problem. Then, of course, we have a young secondary. Malachi Starks, of course, will be going to the league next year. But, I mean, that secondary is young and is getting exposed against good passing teams. And, oh, yeah, we got Nico Iamaleava coming to town this week. So just a lot of things that haven't gone the Dogs' way that have put them in this position. And, again, if you're not watching Georgia intensely or following them every single week, you don't know these things. So you're thinking like, man, did Georgia fall off? Like, what is going on? But I think the team offensively, especially, was supposed to be a lot better this year. But, lost 2 key receivers, or 2 top receivers, and it's showing. The other thing is the play calling. I don't see a world where Mike Bobo returns after this season, especially if we fall short, miss the playoffs. Like, Georgia has Trevor Etienne, a fantastic running back. Nate Frazier, I think people are also starting to see that, fantastic running back. Their play calling has been too pass heavy. One of these games, the commentator said at the start of the game, yeah, Georgia is looking at, I think it was the Texas game actually. Georgia's looking to establish the run more. They feel they've been too pass heavy, and they're going to look to be a more balanced team. The first 3 plays, we throw it and go 3 and out. I don't think people understand just how good Trevor Etienne is, and they probably should understand now. The Texas game, I felt like, was his coming out party, where they finally just wanted to feed him the football. But again, a lot of things going wrong, but I think it definitely started with losing those 2 receivers. We lost a couple of our linemen earlier in the year. Offensive line has definitely been up and down. I mean, the strength of Georgia's team is the pass rush, but unfortunately, the secondary can't even hold for a hot second to let the pass rush get there. Well, at least that was the case last week. So that's where Georgia is right now. And what do we have coming up next? Tennessee. Tennessee this weekend. Listen, every game for Georgia, it's only 3 games left in the regular season. They're in playoff mode now. They're one of the first teams to have to be in playoff mode. Gotta have it. Gotta have it. I know it's a tough game. I know, and thank goodness we don't have any more road games. This was absolutely brutal. This schedule was like, I mean, it's the number 1 strength of schedule in the country. And it feels like it. I mean, this has just been an absolutely brutal schedule to play a tough road game at Ole Miss and then turn around and have Tennessee after that. After the teams we've already played this year, it's just, it's been tough. So, but again, gotta have it. If they want a chance, they gotta have it. I said it earlier this year. Their season comes down to 4 games: the Alabama game, the Texas game, the Ole Miss game, and the Tennessee game. Those are the 4 big games that determine their season. They are 1-2 right now. You go 1-3, you can kiss goodbye to a playoff anything. You can't lose 3 out of your 4 big competitive games. You would really like to be at least 3-1, but now you've lost 2, and now you're just trying to get in. It's you can probably, still a chance to win the SEC and play in a championship game, but you got to win this game, and then I believe it's Massachusetts after this. You'll take care of business there, and then don't sleep on Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech ends the year as they do every year. That Georgia Tech game, and we saw what they did last week, and we're about to talk about it. But Georgia Tech can beat Georgia this year. This is the first year where it is like this is anybody's game, and especially if Georgia beats Tennessee, and Georgia's still out there and got something to play for, and they're gonna come in guns blazing against Georgia. So we'll see. Georgia is still the better team, but again, that's a scary game, and we see what they just did. So more to come with Georgia. Big week. They got to take it week by week. 3 games left. We got to go 3-0. So we'll see how that pans out. Moving on to Georgia Tech versus Miami. Miami is defeated on the road for the first time this year by an unranked Georgia Tech team, 28-23. My response to this is you were warned. It's not sustainable to play like that. Their defense is the weakness of that team. We know their offense is explosive, but Georgia Tech was able to consistently get Miami off of the field, and they did try to make a run, but Georgia Tech was just too much. They were able to hold them off and score when they needed to score on Miami. And listen, that second half, I'm going to just outscore you. We don't care what you do on offense. It's just, I don't think that's sustainable. And here's the thing with Miami. First of all, I've been high on Georgia Tech all year. I know that they are a trap game for most people. They fly under the radar, but they are a darn good football team, and they are headed in the right direction. Miami's schedule is so weak. Miami has not played a ranked team all year long. They have no ranked teams, and part of that is just because they're in a weak conference. They have a weak schedule, and they're in a weak conference. And they've had multiple down-to-the-wire scares. And that is the reason why I am just not sold on Miami. They they have a great offense and a Heisman candidate at quarterback. I am very sold on their offense, but I haven't seen anything that shows or makes me believe that they can beat a good team. Because I said this before, when you get into the playoffs, like you go the whole regular season, like, all right, I think we can win that game. Ooh, that's going to be a close one. Ah, da, 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 da. You throw all of that out when the playoff comes. Everybody's good. Everybody's good. You're just going to have to play well and beat them. There's no way around it. So with Miami, if y'all are struggling with these unranked teams and want to come out slow and then try to get it going later, that's not going to work, and y'all will find yourselves at home after your first game in the playoffs. So I am not sold on Miami, and I felt like this was inevitable for Miami. And honestly, it should have happened sooner and probably multiple different times this year. But Cam Ward is just so great. You know, they have a great receiving core, but man, this was definitely foreseeable for me, and we'll see how things look for them in the future. But their last game of the year, they end the season with Syracuse. That is a game to circle because not only is it against a tough Syracuse team, but it's in Syracuse. And we saw that Miami has struggled with lesser teams that are not as good as Syracuse. And you're going into a tough road environment. I mean, that's going to be interesting. And I'm sure Syracuse can't wait to try to spoil that party for Miami to end their season. So more to come. I can't wait to see how they pan out. But in my eyes, a very foreseeable, inevitable loss for Miami here. And in terms of the ACC, it didn't cost them much. SMU is now atop of the ACC. They are undefeated. But because Miami is still ranked higher, when you look at the college football playoffs, they would be the fourth ranked team because I believe they're like ranked ninth in the poll rankings. But the highest ranked conference champion automatically gets one of the first four seeds. And so being that they are not the top of their conference, but they are the highest ranked team, they would get the higher spot over SMU. So very interesting. We'll get into the polls here soon, but great game there against Georgia Tech and Miami. And then we have Colorado. Colorado was able to beat Texas Tech this weekend, a lot to a little. Colorado does it again. We've gone through stages here with Colorado, like week by week, seeing how good they were. Like after the Nebraska loss, it was like, this might be a repeat of last year. And then weeks go by and they're like, okay, good win. Oh, here's a challenge. Oh, wow. Okay. And the UCF game, I feel like, was really their coming out party, their statement of like, this is not a game. They were major underdogs in that game. And UCF, we now see, has panned out to not be all that great. But they have not slowed up a bit. It seems like the teams that they're supposed to beat, they take care of business. And the teams that you're like, oh, this one could be a toss-up, they come out there and be blowing them out. Like it don't even be that close, but they are proving week by week that they are serious. They keep climbing the polls, and they are in the best position you could be. The control your own destiny position. Listen, Iowa State lost this weekend, which propelled Colorado higher in the Big 12 standings. They now are in a position, if they win out and if they win their conference championship, They will be in the college football playoff. Listen to me. Look at me in my eyes when I say this. If Colorado makes it to the college football playoffs, there needs to be a movie written about this. I cannot even explain how much of a joke Colorado was taken as before the season started. And while they were winning games, and this, I kept saying week by week, I'm going to sit back and wait for them to show me something different. They have yet to show me anything different. The Coach of the Year award is over. That's no discussion there. Travis Hunter. That's the sentence. It's Travis Hunter. That's it. Moving on. But no, Colorado is in great position here. This would be historical. There's nobody who thought Colorado would be where they are at this point. I was hopeful that they could win 6 games this year and maybe sneak into the rankings at the end of the season. But man, oh man, they are right here to shocking the world. So rooting for Colorado here, and that should be fun. Those were the biggest games of last week. Great week of college football as always. And now we got to jump into those college football top 25 rankings. Now, this is a bit confusing when you first get into it. I didn't really understand it. UGA is ranked number 12 in the college football playoff rankings. But when you do the actual bracket, they are not in it, even though they're the 12th team, which is I was super confused by that. And then the 13th ranked team in the college football playoff rankings is the 12th team in the bracket. And so we'll put both on the screen here, but basically Georgia misses the bracket, and Boise State gets in at that 12th spot because the group of 5 champion gets an automatic playoff bid, which will coincide with their ranking or automatically put them at the 12th spot, basically, if they are outside of the top 12 rankings. So because Georgia is ranked 12th, but Boise State is the group of 5 champion and they're outside of the top 12, they take Georgia's spot, basically. So a bit confusing to follow. Another one was SMU is the top of the ACC conference, but in the bracket, Miami is the 4th seed and SMU is not in it. And that is because even though SMU is atop of their conference, Miami is the higher ranked team, and they get the 4th spot because the highest ranked conference champion will automatically get one of the top 4 spots. So a bit hard to follow. It will get better with time as we get used to this new college football 12-team playoff. But that is where we are now. Those are some of the biggest ones. I think if you go by the bracket, you got the 1 seed with Oregon. The 2 seed is Texas. The 3 seed is BYU, and the 4th seed is Miami. And so those are the top 4 teams, as they are the highest ranked conference champions at the moment. Oregon, top of the Big Ten. Texas would be atop of the SEC right now. BYU, top of the Big 12. And then Miami, the top of the ACC. Boise State, again, they are the 5th team, but again, because they're the group of 5 conference champion, they automatically get in, but they are outside of the top 12 rankings. So they automatically get that 12th spot because they are their conference champion. And then outside of that top 4, it would be Ohio State versus Boise State in the first round, and Tennessee versus Notre Dame, and then Indiana at Alabama at Indiana, but Indiana versus Alabama there, and then finally it would be Penn State versus Ole Miss. This just makes you get excited. Like, wow, these would be great matchups. Teams that you don't see play each other that often, but it would be very, very entertaining. Let's get to the outrage here. I think a lot of people are upset and feel that it sets a bad precedent by leaving Georgia out, pretty much. And that is because Georgia has the number 1 strength of schedule this year. And so it is almost insulting when you leave a team who is trying to, challenge themselves and play competitive games during the season, and because they have 2 losses in a big road win, one of the biggest wins of the season for any team, when they have those losses, but then you have a team like Texas whose best win is at Vanderbilt, unranked team, and they would be the number 2 seed and they're ranked number 3. It's like it's a slap in the face, and I've heard that it could set precedents of like, why would a team then make their schedule challenging? Like, clearly strength of schedule is not very important or factored in much. It's kind of about just wins and losses. So, it's like if that is the case, then Army should be in the top 12 or no. So that is the argument there. I do agree with that point to an extent, because I'm a Georgia fan and I've watched them play all season long. I do not see it. It pains me to say that about my team, but I actually think Georgia might just be the 12th best team in the country. When you look at the teams ahead of them, I think I've said this so many times, Georgia could go and beat Oregon next week, or they could go and lose to Tulane. Like, there's just, you don't know what you're getting out of Georgia. We have not seen consistent play, really any good play besides the Clemson game and the Tennessee Tech game, of course. No consistent play from Carson Beck at all. And so when you look at them as a team, it's like, I think the points that they are making are true. Georgia should get some respect and some benefit of the doubt of the schedule that they had. Nobody has had a tougher schedule than Georgia this year. And a lot of teams would have lost more than 2 games at this point in the season. And so they're kind of looking at, like, if Georgia goes in and beats Tennessee next week, obviously they're back into the playoff, and that's huge for them. But it's hard to argue it, because besides that Texas win, they looked terrible against Ole Miss. It wasn't a close loss and Georgia just let it slip away like the Alabama game was. They just looked terrible. Oh yeah, and then the week before that, you almost lost to Florida. It's like, Georgia, help yourself out. I would love to defend you, but I can't argue with what we're seeing on the field. So, and I understand that the outrage and people being upset about that, but a lot of that falls on Georgia and just how they've looked how Carson Beck has looked, the inconsistent play, your close games. You know, the 13-12 win over Kentucky, a 28-10 loss to Ole Miss, Mississippi State lighting you up in the second half after you were up by a gazillion points. Like, little things like that has just not helped Georgia. And then, you know, again, the offense just, it's still kind of a scratching our heads. Like, who is the go-to? What is Georgia's offensive identity? Like, is the secondary going to stop people, or are they not? Like, what is Georgia? And it's too late in the season to still be asking that question, which is why I just don't see it this year. But who knows? Let's hope we beat Tennessee. So we'll see with that. But other big rankings, Colorado goes up to 17. Again, they keep winning football games. Another interesting thing, Colorado is ranked 17th. Kansas State is ranked 16th. We know that Kansas State beat Colorado this year. But Colorado is atop of the second team ranked in the Big 12 because of their conference schedule. So very interesting here. We're getting down to the wire. We also saw Alabama go up to number 10. LSU falls to 22, and Indiana in the top 5. That is man, I've never seen that logo that high up there. They're having a darn good year. But yeah, great football here. Very excited to see these rankings and how these last few weeks end up. Quick hits we got for this week. Just mentioned Alabama. They completely stomped LSU on the road, 42-13. LSU has just completely fallen off of a cliff this year. They were competitive, and then they let a game slip away, and then now they're like just not very good. That was supposed to be a much better game than it ended up being. And credit to Alabama, their resilience and bouncing back with all the talk has been going on around them. They are back in the top 10. And, you know, again, the SEC is still wide open. Everything in front of them. BYU survives Utah. I have this highlighted because Utah is on the schedule this week for Colorado. Utah is a tough team to still play. This is a road game as well for Colorado, and I know that they typically play well this year on the road. And they are, I don't know, Utah may now be at 500 or maybe a game under it, but you know, if Colorado continues to do what they've done all year, show up and show out, I don't think they are a team that comes out with the mentality like, oh, we're better than them, because they've been, even in the games where like maybe they're not the overdogs, but it's, you know, a close game, people are like, oh, they're gonna get killed. Like they seem to come out and play competitive every game, no matter who the team is. So I expect them to do the same here. I do know that Utah, you know, you can't play the record, but they haven't shown me that that's what they do. I think Deion has those boys ready to play week in and week out. With, you know, they come out with that right mentality. Play with a chip on their shoulder, you know. And then Iowa State, another team in the Big 12, they fell to Kansas. This is also, everything I speak on in the Big 12 is how it's related to Colorado. So Kansas beats Iowa State 45-36. Iowa State was the second-ranked team in the Big 12, but now they've lost again, which propelled Colorado up. And so the Kansas game, for most people, I believe, is a trap game. Let's not forget that this was a ranked team to start the season. They were a top 25 ranked team at the beginning of the season. They've lost a bunch of games, but that is a team. It's a trap game because you would look at their record and think, oh, they are sorry. No, they are not. Almost every single one of their losses were very close games that could have gone either way. And so Kansas is also on Colorado's schedule, and that is definitely a game that they can't let it trap them. They got to come out there and play those boys with respect like they should be, because they are a team that's just, they got on the short end of the stick in almost all their games, but they are a team that is definitely capable of winning and beating good teams. So it was shown there against Iowa State. But great win for Kansas, and Colorado got to stay focused, finish it off. Those are the quick hits, and we got the Week 12 must-see TV games. Not a ton of them, only a handful this week. Obviously, the biggest one would be Tennessee at Georgia. Georgia got to have it. Got to have it. No more excuses. No more chances. No more anything. You got to win it. And you got to win the next one, and you got to win the next one. Got to go 3-0. 3 more games left. Can't afford another loss here. Utah at Colorado. Colorado is just must-see TV, and Utah is kind of sort of another trap game. Bad record, but as we saw, they're a team capable of competing with good teams. They almost took down BYU. And then I have Oregon at Wisconsin as a question mark must-see TV game. That might be if you have the TV on, might as well check into it, but I am just not sold on Wisconsin. And the last time I was this overconfident was against Oregon. I thought Ohio State was going to go into Oregon and just obliterate them, and the opposite happened. So I don't foresee that. I don't think Wisconsin has the firepower to compete at all with Oregon, but I have been proven wrong before. But Oregon has just come out, or another team that comes out and just takes care of business. Any of these type of games where it's like, oh, Oregon's better, but this can be a scary game. Oh, it's on the road. Let's see. Oregon comes out there and beats them 42-6. And it's like, okay. So not really worried, and probably not that much of a must-see game there, because I think Oregon will take care of business, but we shall see. We shall see. That is the show this week. Great week of college football that's just passed, and another good one coming up. Big games, and again, we're getting to that time of the season where these games count. You gotta have them late in the season. You can't afford many more losses if you're fighting for something, fighting for a position here. So a lot on the line. So we'll see how it plays out. Again, thank you for joining us as always. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. We are exclusively on YouTube, and make sure you go follow us on TikTok at Stupid Fans Club. We'll see you next week.